Chapter 51, Building a City on the Roadside. You are listening at novelfull.audio. My hometown's in the rearview mirror, and the whole world stretched out in front of me. Young Bilbo stepping outside the Shire for the very first time. That night, Bilbo just couldn't drift off. He'd lie down for a bit, then be right back up. Gandalf and Levi were wide awake too. Gandalf was propped against a rock, puffing on his pipe, while Levi was up high, scanning the surroundings. Roar, eerie howls and unsettling sounds echoed through the mountains, forests, and canyons, making everyone uneasy. What's that racket? Bilbo was clueless. He'd never seen an orc, let alone heard one. The noise immediately stirred several dwarves, Thorin included. That's orcs. Mean, nasty creatures. Judging by the sound, there are dozens, at least, Philly explained to Bilbo. They're all over the lonely land. They love to sneak up on folks while they're sleeping, snuffing them out without a peep. Bilbo was rattled by this and started to sweat everywhere. Gandalf, still puffing away, glanced over at Levi, who was keeping watch from above, and just shook his head. Used to be crawling with them out here, things are a little different now. Sensing the orcs getting closer, more and more people woke up. While Bilbo was still trying to figure things out, Balin started telling stories about their past battles, including how Thorin got the name Oakenshield. Meanwhile, deep in a pitch-black forest, a patrol of orc scouts spotted the campfire. Tell the boss we found the dwarf scum. The squad leader barked the order, sending one orc to keep tracking while the others raced back to report. Boom. The heavens opened, and it started pouring. The next day, the group rode on, soaked to the bone. Mr. Gandalf, think you could put a stop to this rain? It'll stop when it stops, Gandalf said, not really answering the question, and then added, if you want to change the weather, you'd better find another wizard. Any more? Bilbo asked, all ears. Are there other wizards? Sure are. Gandalf glanced at Levi, hesitated, and said, there are 5 of us in total. Besides me, there's Saruman in white robes, Radagast in brown robes, and a couple in blue robes. He looked at Levi again after saying that. Levi returned the look. Bilbo noticed Gandalf kept looking at Levi and peered over himself. Well, Gandalf's got it covered. Nothing to add, all right. Seeing that Levi wasn't saying anything, Gandalf went back to talking about the brown-robed Radagast. Gandalf had mentioned him, after seeing Levi's alchemy setup, as someone else who could whip up potions, but Radagast mostly used his to patch up little critters. This brown-robed wizard hung out in the woods all year, a real nature lover. He thought every living thing deserved respect and love. Even if it was just a tiny animal, he'd pull out all the stops to save it, except, of course, for nasty creatures spawned from the dark, like wargs and the giant spiders of the Black Forest. The downpour finally eased up, and the group grabbed a quick breather before pushing on. They went past Bree, out of the last human settlement, over Weathertop, and kept heading east. Suddenly, Gandalf pointed. Hold on, we're here. Levi's territory's just over there, that roadside fortress. Territory? Levi's a lord? One of the dwarves asked. This was serious. Was he like Thorin, a lord leading his people to reclaim their home? Well, you could say that. And he's not your average lord. Gandalf was being mysterious. Does that mean we're close to your place, Levi? Bilbo asked. He was itching to see where Levi lived. Levi always came to him. He hadn't gotten a chance to return the favor. Yep, my place isn't far off the main road. Can we go take a look? You're welcome to. Levi nodded. Bilbo looked around, checking with the others. Levi said it's okay, and I don't have a problem with it, Gandalf called from the front. The dwarves were buzzing with excitement. They'd been curious about this guy for ages, but there was still one person who hadn't chimed in. The dwarves knew that whether they went or not depended on what the leader said. Since the local lord's offering his hospitality, I'm fine with it. If you ever come to the dwarf territory, we'll roll out the welcome mat too, Thorin told Levi. Sounds good to me. The dwarves were happy to have a break, and Bilbo was thrilled to see Levi's home. As for Gandalf, he was already leading the way. Holy cow! A few minutes later, the dwarves stood gawking at the towering city wall that seemed to stretch forever. Their jaws were on the floor. "You're telling me this is Levi's place? I've never heard of a city this big around here. When did they build it? How come we didn't hear anything about it? It's a miracle. More impressive than any human city I've ever seen." They'd never seen Baicheng before. "But how do we get in?" "Hey! Your lord's back. Open the gate." One dwarf yelled at the empty city walls. Gandalf corrected him. "No need to shout. There's no one up there." Then he walked up to the iron gate like he knew what he was doing and waited for Levi to catch up. The iron gate was strange. It didn't seem to have a lock, but it wouldn't budge. It had to be some kind of magic. Click, Levi pulled a lever, and the iron gate swung open. "Welcome to my territory. I think we can kick back here for a few days. We've got plenty of supplies." Everyone's gear and horses were quickly taken care of. The dwarves were marveling at the city's craftsmanship, looking all around. "I bet the builders here had some kind of obsession. Everything square. But I like it. The clean lines and sharp angles really appealed to the dwarves. A lot of their own buildings were angular and looked pretty tough." "What's that?" Someone pointed at the iron golem patrolling the city. Gandalf stopped a dwarf from trying to touch it and explained. "That's a city-guarding golem created by Levi. It's in charge of keeping the place safe. I wouldn't test its toughness if I were you. I reckon that thing could take on 10 orcs without breaking a sweat." "Yeah, and maybe 10 dwarves." "Really?" Some of the dwarves looked offended, but when one of the iron golems actually clanked over, they got a little wobbly in the knees and started clinging to each other. "Oh, no, we're guests, invited by your master." The iron golem tilted its head. It pulled a little red flower out of nowhere and handed it to Balin, who was standing in front. Everyone was taken by surprise. "Oh, thank you." The old warrior with the white beard thanked the iron golem politely. "They're pretty friendly, aren't they?" Balin said calmly, as if he hadn't just been yelling a second ago. While they were talking, another iron golem came over and handed a little red flower to another dwarf. "I agree." The dwarf took the flower and nodded. The iron golem knew just when to give the flowers, or at least it got the height right. "Hey, everyone. Don't just stand out here. I've got a big lunch ready, so why don't you come on in and grab a bite?" While the dwarves were still gawking at the flowers, Levi had already laid out a feast and was waiting for them inside. Bilbo, who had been speechless for a while, snapped back to reality as soon as he heard the word food. "Wait up!" he shouted. This was food Levi had cooked himself. Chapter 52 Dispute. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hiccup. At the castle dining table, Bomber belched, rolled his eyes, plopped onto a chair, snored, and instantly crashed out. "Oh." Gandalf shook his head. "Who's going to carry him inside? I told him not to pig out so much." Old Balin patted his gut and said, "Forgive me, Gandalf, I've never had such amazing food. Everything here is just, wow. Beautiful scenery, incredible food, too bad there's no wine to wash it down. If I'd known there'd be such a feast, I'd have blown all my silver on a few barrels of the good stuff in that last town." At that point, every dwarf at the table was sporting a serious food baby and letting loose with some impressive burps. Thorin was a little more reserved, taking his time and chewing each bite carefully, but his fork never stopped moving. Seeing that Gandalf seemed to be giving him the side eye, Thorin paused, cleared his throat a couple of times, and said, "I must admit, these dishes are truly something special. Many are completely new to me and quite innovative." Then, turning to Levi, he said, "Thank you very much for your hospitality." After seeing this fortress, everyone's idea of Levi had completely changed. He wasn't just some wandering knight, he was a lord leading an expedition. Sure, the place seemed deserted, like nobody actually lived there. But with the kind of leadership this guy had, a simple call to bring people in would have the place buzzing with new residents in no time. Plus, judging by the setup, this lord clearly had some magical abilities. But then again, anyone hanging out with Gandalf probably knew a trick or two. Some of the dwarves asked Levi about it, and he didn't deny it. After all, these miraculous things could definitely be chalked up to magic, in a sense. Seeing all this with their own eyes, the dwarves' attitude shifted big time. They may be a little reckless, but they weren't dumb. Eat your fill. Don't hold back on my account, Levi said, gesturing to everyone in the expedition. Dwarves definitely had huge appetites, second only to hobbits, but even if they could eat, even if they packed up bags to go, it barely made a dent in the supplies Levi had stockpiled. He hardly noticed the food reserves going down. This is just travel snacks. The dwarves looked at Levi's mountains of dried meat, fruits, veggies, and bread. You call this travel snacks? That before, they'd all been munching on cram, a travel bread that dwarves and humans from River Valley State like to bring. It could be made delicious, but balancing taste with a long shelf life was just unrealistic. I could eat this kind of travel snack for the rest of my life, one dwarf muttered, taking a huge bite of dried meat. After stuffing themselves, the dwarves wandered around, checking out the territory. Levi's castle was huge, with tons of rooms. When they got tired, they could just pick a room and crash. The night passed without incident. For some reason, there wasn't a single orc in sight, and the terrifying howls they usually heard every night in the wilderness were gone. They didn't even need to be on guard while sleeping. One by one, the dwarves went to bed. On the top floor of the castle, Gandalf leaned against the window, lit his pipe with the ring of fire, and smoked silently, staring intently as if lost in thought. The game board of Middle-earth may be about to change. Wizards and some powerful elves had a kind of gut feeling. They could vaguely sense possible future trends. Why don't you get some sleep, Gandalf? Levi came up, plopped down in a chair, took a bite of an apple, and tossed one to Gandalf. Gandalf caught the apple, wiped it on his robe, took a bite, and nodded. Sweet, crispy, and juicy. I will. Let's just say I need to catch some Z's. The beds here have a kind of magic to them. Once you lie down, you can't help but sleep until morning. What do you think about this mission? Gandalf suddenly asked. I think it'll work out. Gandalf nodded. I hope so. The night flew by. Early the next morning, the dwarves, now well rested, got up, packed their stuff and the travel food Levi had provided, and set off east again. Over the course of the meal, everyone had gotten to know Levi. On the way, several dwarves came over to chat. When you come to our place, you'll see that the dwarves' hospitality is the real deal. Strong ale, huge roasts with bones, banquets, songs, warm hearths. You won't regret it. I'm looking forward to it. I'll definitely visit if I get the chance. Eventually, they arrived at a familiar spot for Levi, the last bridge. This bridge had a long history, dating back to the First Age. The kingdom that originally built and maintained it was gone. Now, Rivendell had taken over the responsibility of maintaining it. Thanks to the elves' care, the bridge was still open. Looks like some farmers used to live here, someone said. After crossing the bridge, they quickly came across some ruins, the remains of several destroyed houses, with no one in sight. We'll camp here tonight, Thorin ordered. Levi pulled out the map and smacked his forehead. This asterisk was it. No wonder he hadn't found it before. When he'd gone looking for the troll's treasure, he'd entered the forest from the west and hacked his way east. The spot where the expedition had decided to camp was on the southern edge of the forest. I think we should keep moving, Gandalf said, looking at the ruins with a bad feeling. Why were the houses destroyed? Where had the farmers gone? We can go to Rivendell. I said I'm not going anywhere near there, Thorin said, rejecting Gandalf's suggestion. Why not? The elves can help us, give us food, shelter, advice, just like Levi. Thorin glanced at Levi, then looked at Gandalf. Maybe. But I don't need the advice of pointy-eared tree-huggers who never lift a finger. The two started arguing, and Levi just stood there, watching. I gave you the map and the key, not for you to cling to them. I don't think you should be holding on to them either. Translation: It was mine to begin with. Thorin's words were the last straw for Gandalf, who looked ready to blow a gasket. I got you the key and the map, and you turn around and blame me? Gandalf shook his head and turned away. Gandalf, where are you going? Bilbo asked. To be with the only reasonable person around here. Who? Me. I'm done with these dwarves for today. I want Levi to knock them all out and drag them to Rivendell. Gandalf stopped. Levi, come with me. Huh? Okay. Levi glanced at Bilbo, letting him know he didn't need to worry, then got up and followed the grumpy wizard. Bilbo looked around, unsure of what to say. The departure of their mutual friend left Bilbo feeling awkward. Bomber, light a fire and start cooking. Thorin ignored Gandalf's departure and started barking orders, getting everyone ready to camp. Chapter 53 Famous Attractions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The two of them walked on for a while. When Gandalf had calmed down a bit, he told Levi, whether those dwarves like it or not, we have to go to Rivendell. Only Elrond, the Lord of Rivendell, can decipher the map. We can't achieve our goal on our own. We need the elves' help. Levi, I'm counting on you to persuade them if necessary, by any means. Okay, I will if I have to, Levi agreed. But where are we headed? Why not go back? It was getting dark, and Levi was curious. Gandalf paused. I'd rather not deal with the dwarves right now. You go back, and I'll scout ahead. I'll catch up later. Fine. Levi knew Gandalf was still fuming. He turned and headed back. Meanwhile, back near the ruined cottage, Bilbo was carrying 2 bowls, ready to serve soup to Kili and Fili. He found them standing stock still, looking dazed. What's wrong? 2 horses are missing. There were supposed to be 17, now there are only 15. Besides the 15 riding horses, they had 2 pack animals for supplies. Should we tell Thorin? Not yet. Let's not worry him just yet. And Levi's goofy-looking horse is gone too. Kili and Fili were in a bind. They couldn't afford to replace the equipment. As the expedition's designated snitch, you need to help us figure this out, Bilbo. Sighing, Bilbo put down the bowls and looked around. These trees look like they've been ripped up. The scene made him uneasy. What could be strong enough to do that? Agreed. Kili suddenly pointed into the distance. Hold on, is that a fire over there? What is it? Trolls, Kili said grimly. Time for you to shine, Mr. Baggins. Mountain trolls are dim-witted and clumsy. They'll never see you, you're so small. Me? No, I can't. We'll be right behind you, watching. Thump. Before he could argue, Bilbo was shoved out of the undergrowth. Alright, fine. He had no choice but to grin and bear it. Go get the others. Even though Kili and Fili dreaded Thorin's wrath, they knew the situation was serious. Trolls were too much for them. They ran to get help. The dwarves watched Bilbo nervously as he snuck closer. Finally, the trolls spotted him and grabbed him. Anyone else around? No. Liar. No, I swear, no one. Bilbo, terrified, was determined not to rat out his friends. Kili couldn't stand it any longer. Drawing his sword, he charged forward, slashing at the troll. Let him go. Charge. Seeing that they were discovered, Thorin gave the order and led the charge himself. The dwarves roared and followed. A brawl erupted. Despite the chaos, the dwarves worked together like a well-oiled machine, landing blow after blow. Their teamwork and coordination were what made them a force to be reckoned with in Middle-earth, despite their size. Eat this, you overgrown oaf. Clang! Someone swung a warhammer, hitting a troll square in the head. But the blow, which would have shattered a man's skull, only knocked out a few teeth. Troll hide was incredibly thick, like rock, making it hard for ordinary weapons to pierce. Even the strong dwarves could only scratch and annoy them, not inflict serious harm. Still, with the dwarves working together, the trolls were on the defensive, realizing they'd be killed if they kept taking this beating. Suddenly, two trolls grabbed Bilbo by the arms and legs. "Drop your weapons or we'll rip him apart," that the dwarves looked to Thorin. Thorin stared at Bilbo, his eyes wide with fear. Without hesitation, Thorin dropped his weapon. He valued the life of Bilbo over the lives of his own company. Trolls prefer fresh meat and usually don't kill until the last minute. The dwarves, tied up nearby, groaned, cursed, and watched the pot of water boil. "We need to hurry, or dawn's coming, and I don't want to turn to stone." One of the trolls spoke, and Bilbo seized on it. He scrambled to his feet, trying to stall. "No, no, no, that's not how you cook dwarves. You have to, skin them first." The dwarves protested. "What did you say, you little twerp? You were waiting for me to come out." Thorin kicked the dwarf who was yelling to shut him up. Bilbo ignored the threat, racking his brain for a way to buy time. Suddenly, he spotted a figure on a nearby boulder. A man in black armor. The man held a finger to his lips, signaling Bilbo to be quiet. Then, while the trolls were distracted, he leaped down, *boom, star, the man's sword struck, and the troll screamed. The armor that the dwarves couldn't break was pierced open, and blood poured out. At the same time, the troll burst into flames and collapsed, wailing. "They have an accomplice." The trolls, failing to realize the gravity of the situation, attacked. Levi struck again, setting the second troll on fire. But the third troll lunged, its fist, bigger than a dwarf's entire body, whistling through the air. "Behind you!" Thorin shouted. Levi smirked and raised a hand, saying, "Boom." He blocked the troll's punch, never taking a step back. Netherite armor had its perks. "I must be seeing things," one dwarf said, eyes wide. That punch should have sent anyone flying, but he just blocked it. Blocking the troll's fist with his sword, Levi spun, taking on 3 trolls at once. What was even more surprising was that he seemed to anticipate their every move, dodging each attack. It was like he could see the future. Although he could have relied on his armor to tank the hits, Levi fell back on his old habits and dodged the incoming attacks. "Damn eel!" One of the trolls spat. The cleverest of the trolls suddenly froze and backed away. The situation reminded him of a scary story that had been passed down through generations, the legend of the money-eater. According to the legend, no troll could ever land a blow on a money-eater. The money-eater would hunt down lone trolls, kill them, and devour all their treasures, leaving nothing behind. The legend had prompted many trolls to travel in groups. You're a money-eater." The troll whimpered, eyes wide with terror. "What's a money-eater?" The tied-up dwarves looked around, confused. "That's what you call me," Levi said, flicking the blood from his sword. He smiled. But the troll saw only a deadly scythe. "Run, *boom, star. May the dawn claim you." Before the trolls could escape, Gandalf appeared on a nearby boulder. He smashed his staff down, cracking the rock. Sunlight streamed in. The trolls froze in their tracks and turned to stone. "Gandalf!" Bilbo exclaimed. It seems I was almost too late. Looks like you had things handled here without me." Chapter 54, Chasing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Why grab aggro when you're almost dead? Levi sighed, sheathing his sword and greeting Gandalf. "Right on time." Wizards are never late, they arrive precisely when they mean to," Gandalf replied with a twinkle in his eye. He tapped the 3 troll statues frozen mid-escape with his staff, nodding, clearly pleased with his handiwork. "Good thing nobody's missing an arm or a leg." "That's thanks to your burglar and Levi." Thorin approached, greeting Gandalf as if their earlier squabble had never occurred. "These trolls must have wandered down from the Ettenmoors." Gandalf glanced at the black blood dripping from Levi's sword. Not a good sign. The Ettenmoors were a desolate and dark place near Angmar and the Misty Mountains, a known troll haunt. The last time trolls ventured this far south, things were seriously messed up. Meaning, back in the dark days when Sauron was still around, Gandalf looked at Levi, his brow furrowed. Nothing certain. Maybe it's like you said, Levi replied cryptically, leaving the others puzzled. Sauron wasn't exactly easy to kill, even chopped to bits. He could reform from a puddle of black goo years later. Losing the ring was a setback, but nobody could be sure he was gone for good. Only Levi seemed to know for sure that Sauron was still kicking around. Gandalf shook his head, shelving his doubts for now, and surveyed the surroundings. Trolls can't stand daylight. Their lair has to be nearby. But Levi, already halfway up a small hill, had discovered an entrance buzzing with flies and mosquitoes. This way, torch in hand, Levi led the way. What is this place? It stinks. Several dwarves wrinkled their noses, coughing from the stench. The trolls' treasure hoard. Asterisk crunch, star, they reached the cavern's depths, the ground suddenly feeling different underfoot. Boxes of jewels lined the walls, and gold and silver coins formed a shimmering mountain under the torchlight. We've hit the jackpot. Several dwarves grabbed shovels, burying treasure they couldn't carry to keep anyone else from finding and nabbing it. Thorin picked up a couple of swords from the dusty cobwebs, examining them closely. A troll didn't make these. And no human smith could craft something this fine. Gandalf took a sword, blew off the dust, and studied it. This comes from Gondolin, forged by the high elves of the First Age. Hearing elf-made, Thorin recoiled as if the sword had suddenly become repulsive. There's no finer blade in all the world. Asterisk sniff sniff star, Thorin pocketed the sword anyway, admiring it thoughtfully. Glamdring and Orcrist, Levi recognized the blades instantly. Glamdring was the sword of Turgon, Lord of Gondolin and High King of the Noldor. Orcrist was its mate, wielded by some unknown, but undoubtedly skilled, elf. Both swords had tasted the blood of countless orcs and bore their own names. Mind if I take a look? Levi asked. Gandalf handed over his sword without hesitation, and Thorin followed suit. Levi examined them carefully. Glamdring, attack +9. Orcrist, attack +9. Same damage as his own ancient sword, top-of-the-line blades. What do you think, Levi? If you like one, keep it. I'm sure it'd be put to good use in your hands, Gandalf offered tactfully. His staff worked just fine, he didn't really need a sword. They're excellent swords, but not necessarily better than mine. Levi returned the blades and drew his own elven sword. Even in the dim cave, the blade shone with an icy light. It had an even more chilling aura than the others. Still, these were undeniably stronger and sharper than Netherworld gold swords. After hiding the treasure, the group headed out of the cave. During their exit, Gandalf spotted a sharp-looking elven short sword lying on the ground, picked it up, and handed it to Bilbo with a few words of advice. True courage isn't about knowing when to kill, but about knowing when to spare. Something's coming, someone shouted from outside, and Gandalf rushed out to investigate. Bilbo stared at the dagger for a moment, then followed. Turned out it was a false alarm. Radagast the Brown had arrived. Gandalf, something's wrong in Mirkwood. The forest is teeming with giant, evil spiders. Must be the spawn of Ungoliant. Ungoliant, a primordial being of immense power from beyond the world, now vanished. Only her offspring, Shelob, could intimidate Sauron, who merely sent her a few orcs now and then to keep her at bay. I scouted Dol Guldur. It was terrifying. And I found this. Radagast produced a tightly wrapped sword, the sword of the Witch King of Angmar. Gandalf's face darkened. Asterisk howl, star. A wolf's howl interrupted their conversation. A warg leaped down from above, only to be cut down by Levi's sword. More followed, but they were dispatched quickly. Warg scouts. That means a large orc war party is nearby. We have to get out of here. The ponies are gone, spooked. A dwarf ran up, panicked. Except for Levi's horse. Bilbo sighed. So much for that plan. I'll draw them off. I'll slaughter them. Radagast and Levi spoke almost simultaneously, then exchanged a look, each clearly thinking something different. Those are Gundabad wargs. They'll outrun you, Gandalf told Radagast. These are Rosgobel rabbits. I'd like to see them try. With no time to argue, Gandalf looked from Radagast to Levi. I think it's better if. A moment later, on the plains, half the wargs were being chased and chopped down by Levi on horseback, while the other half were chasing Radagast, nipping at his heels. Gandalf led the dwarves and Bilbo in the opposite direction, avoiding the main pack of warg riders led by a petty chieftain. Forget the hair-riding wizard. Go after the human. We'll kill the dwarves first. The chieftain snarled. As the brown wizard's decoy faded, the pressure on Gandalf and the dwarves intensified, but they still managed to hold their own. I finally believe Levi wasn't bragging. Bofur peeked out from behind a large rock, watching Levi chase the howling wargs with a look of awe. I don't know how humans can be that strong. Never heard of anything like it. There's a lot you don't know. Let's go, now. Gandalf urged, leading the dwarves to a hidden passage. Chapter 55 The Sword Still Unknown. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Swish, that the long sword sliced down, another warg burst into flames, and crashed to the ground, howling. Levi, riding a fast horse, sped after the fleeing orcs, buying the dwarves some time. Shoot his horse. The orc leader yelled. Several archers in the distance notched arrows, aimed for Levi's groin, and let loose a volley, but honestly, even if they could hit the horse at a full gallop, they'd only scratch the paint. Not even worth mentioning. Judging by the stacks of hay in Levi's pack, he could stand there and let them fill the horse with arrows, and it still wouldn't go down. As for Levi, a few blips on his health bar would be a courtesy nod to their efforts. His defenses were so high that regular bows and arrows barely made a dent. With a thunder of hooves, Levi cleaved another warg and kept charging. He was hacking and slashing when a loud, familiar horn blasted in the distance. Rumble, a company of Noldor cavalry, clad in silver-gray armor, galloped into view, already in formation to engage the orcs. It was a one-sided massacre. The orc leader screamed, trying to rally his troops, but his voice was soon lost in the death throes of his men. Fall back. He shrieked, and then took off running. He knew this fight was a lost cause. The plan had been to stall, kill a few dwarves, and then bail. But now, with that guy and a squadron of elves, what was the point? Soon, the plain was littered with fleeing and dying orcs. The rest had vanished. Levi scanned the area but didn't see Gandalf or the dwarves. They must have taken the hidden path to the valley. Once he was sure the orcs were gone, the elves reformed their lines, sheathed their swords, and rode towards Levi. You again. Elrond called out as he approached Levi. You've gotten stronger since we last met. I've been hearing things about you. The pleasure's all mine, Levi replied, nodding to the Lord of the Valley. I'm just curious why these orcs are stirring things up again. Elrond gazed at Levi thoughtfully. No, not my doing this time. The reason is complicated. But they should be reaching the valley soon. Meanwhile, at the valley entrance. Mithrandir, an elf said, descending the steps to greet Gandalf. Ah, Lindar. I heard you crossed the Bruinen, Lindar said in Elvish. Gandalf approached him, his expression serious. I need to speak with Lord Elrond. Lord Elrond is not here. Not here. Where is he? As Gandalf asked, a horn sounded at the valley entrance, and the elven cavalry marched across the narrow bridge. Alert! The dwarves closed ranks around Bilbo, grabbing their weapons and glaring at the approaching elves. Wait, isn't that Levi? Bilbo pushed past the dwarves and squinted. Gandalf, Elrond called out. Lord Elrond. Melanin, my friend, Gandalf responded in Elvish. Elrond dismounted, handed his weapon to Lindar, and after a brief exchange with Gandalf, voiced his concern. It's strange that the orcs keep encroaching. Last time, they were drawn by a skilled fighter. What's attracting them now? It's probably us, Thorin grumbled. While they spoke, Levi dismounted, handed his horse to an elf, and greeted Gandalf and Elrond. So, you know each other, Elrond observed, glancing from Gandalf to Levi. That's what I was going to say. But Gandalf didn't seem surprised. He simply nodded and turned to the dwarves. Welcome, Thorin, son of Thrain. We haven't met, I believe. You carry yourself with a certain gravitas. I knew Thror when he was king under the mountain. Really? He never mentioned you. Elrond took a deep breath and switched to Elvish. Light the fires, prepare the wine, and welcome our honored guests. He knew better than to argue with dwarves. Is he talking trash about us? Gloin growled, annoyed by the unfamiliar language. No, Gloin, he's inviting us to a feast, Gandalf sighed. The dwarves huddled together, exchanging glances and muttering. All right, then lead the way. Unlike at Levi's fort, the dwarves felt no need for politeness with the elves. Later, the dwarves stared at the sparse, eco-friendly table with dismay. What incarnation is this? Worse than Levi's place, and he has better food than this. This all looks like rabbit food. All raw, at that. My pony wouldn't touch this. A dwarf tossed aside a handful of leaves in disgust. Can Levi cook? If he can fix this, it'll do. The dwarves huddled at the table, griping about the elven cuisine. Keely discreetly winked at an elf. I may not like elves, but she's not bad-looking. That's not a she. Ha 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 ha, the dwarves roared with laughter, as Keely rolled his eyes. At the head of the table, Levi sat with Gandalf, Elrond, and Thorin. Elrond identified Gandalf and Thorin's swords, describing their origins. Orcrist. Forged by my kin in the west. May it serve you well. Despite Thorin's rudeness, the elven lord held no grudge, wishing the sword well even in the hands of a dwarf. Speaking of swords, Levi has one forged in the First Age. Why don't you take a look at it? Gandalf suggested, impressed by Levi's sword. Oh, Lord Elrond already examined it last time I visited. But Levi still drew the sword. Elrond nodded and took it again, examining it more closely this time. I can confirm that the craftsmanship is comparable to the others. And, maybe it's just me, but it seems sharper. And. Elrond held the blade to the light, noticing an almost imperceptible shimmer. It possesses some sort of enchantment. And it feels warm. It feels different from last time. As if it has been purified by blood and fire on the battlefield, the sword seems brighter. Staring at the ever-sharpening edge, Elrond had a moment of realization. Perhaps you should give it a name. Name? Levi took the sword, feeling awkward. Naming things had always been a pain. Seated next to them, Bilbo, watching Elrond examine each weapon, quietly pulled out his dagger under the table, wondering if it was a sword with its own story. Seeing this, Balin said, Don't bother, lad, I think yours is more of a letter opener than a sword. Bilbo lowered his head, lost in thought. The light dinner drew to a close. Besides the wine, the dwarves' only comment on the food was not as good as Levi's trail rations. Levi knew the elves had meat. They had served it to him on his last visit, but even the most tolerant elves couldn't allow their lord to be insulted without some gentle retribution. This vegetarian feast was a subtle payback for the dwarves' unrefined palates. That night, under the stars, Elrond deciphered the secret map for Thorin and Gandalf. Bilbo, meanwhile, was captivated by the view from a nearby fence. Levi was at the stable, telling the elves that were tending to the horses that they didn't need to be fed hay. Levi then asked if Agra was around. Agra was the elf who had welcomed Levi during his earlier visit. As elves measure time differently, he probably assumed that Levi had only left not long ago. Levi decided that he would give them some gifts. Everyone in the valley was occupied with their own affairs. Meanwhile, on Amon Law, the hill of wind and cloud, the surviving orc leader crept up to a pale, muscular orc. The dwarves. Lord, we lost them. And the elf scum attacked us. Don't give me excuses, Azeg snarled, his height towering over the leader. I want the head of the dwarf king. We were outnumbered. And there's this guy. I barely escaped. The leader stammered. Azeg grabbed his throat, slowly lifting him into the air, his roar growing louder. You should have died there, crack, star. Azeg squeezed his hand, and the leader's head lolled to one side. His body was tossed aside for the wolves. The dwarves will surface sooner or later. Put a bounty on their heads. Arg! The orcs howled, mounting their wargs to continue the hunt, but before they could leave, a scout arrived, trembling. Lord, we found a fortified settlement in the wilderness to the east. Big, and quiet. Azeg's fierce expression froze. He clenched his fist, took a deep breath, and snapped, "Go around it." "Yes, Lord." He knew who lived there. Long ago, 2 orcs had fled from its walls, bringing the terror of Wayside back to the misty mountains. For a long time, no orc had dared to approach, until the incident in the Anduin Valley had happened. The orcs' hatred for that man was etched into their bones, a hatred so deep that it had evolved into fear. Thanks to Dongdong's study for the 100 coins, book friend 201909151935133323 for the 100 coins, Su Xiaoqiao who loves reading books for the 500 coins, book friend 202311142328188575 for the 100 coins, and to all the voters and those who helped correct typos. Thank you for your support. P.S. Today, there was an update of 5,600 words. Can that count as an extra update if rounded? Chapter 56 Trivia in the Valley. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Early morning, Bilbo wandered the balcony, admiring the view. Where the elves live. Like Gandalf said, as a kid, Bilbo had searched for elves, trekking alone to the forest and returning late, his feet covered in leaves and gravel. That was the first stirring of adventure. Now, seeing elves for real felt like a childhood dream fulfilled. Lost in thought, he noticed a broken sword, and the hobbit curiously stood on his tiptoes to get a better look. Beside it was a mural of a figure in black armor, a menacing helmet, and wielding a black mace. Most striking was the ring on the figure's hand, its gold gleaming against the dark background. Kind of like Levi, but way fiercer. Bilbo concluded it wasn't as good as Levi's armor. He quickly forgot about the mural and admired the scenery from another balcony. Click, light footsteps approached, and Elrond's calm voice followed. Not with your companions. No, they won't miss me. They all think I shouldn't be on this trip, actually. Indeed? Elrond studied the hobbit. I've heard hobbits adapt well. Really? Yes. I've also heard they prefer the comforts of home. Bilbo considered this. I've heard it's unwise to ask elves for advice. Their answers are always both yes and no. Elrond paused. It was a trap. The only way to answer was yes or no, but either would prove Bilbo's point. After a moment, Elrond realized it was a joke, but his next words weren't. You're welcome to stay, should you wish it. As Rivendell's most powerful lord, Elrond, like the wizards, had glimpses of the future. This hobbit, with his courage, kindness, and compassion, would endure hardships he didn't deserve, and those hardships would be crucial to the world's safety. Elrond turned and left Bilbo to enjoy the morning. My lord, the cook's overwhelmed, and the wine's nearly gone. How long do you think they'll be staying? 2 weeks had passed since the dwarves arrived in Rivendell. Linder, responsible for supplies, rushed to Elrond for help. Keep hosting them for now. We'll deal with supplies later. Elrond was incredibly generous, tolerating the chaos in his home, out of sight, out of mind, but then the Lord stumbled upon a group of dwarves bathing in the clear fountain. Elrond sighed, wondering if he should post a no-bathing sign. He'd lived for millennia and had never seen anything like it. Levi was much more well-behaved in comparison. Back in his residence, Elrond sighed, took out a golden apple, and examined it closely. It was a gift from Levi. Beyond its craftsmanship and the precious materials, the golden apple radiated vitality. It was a beautiful and life-saving treasure, incredibly valuable. Elrond couldn't think of a suitable return gift. The golden apple had boosted Rivendell's reputation. Before that, though, on his first day, Levi had visited Agra. After half a year, the elf remained unchanged, living his timeless life. Time moved so slowly for elves that Agra's first words were, "Hey, you're back," that he thought Levi had just stepped out for a moment. "Ah, yes, I'm back." Levi played along. "I heard you made quite a stir in the Anduin Valley. east of the Misty Mountains, during your trip. Many elves are curious about the human who scared off orcs so quickly. Now, when they gossip, I can say I know him. Oh, well. Levi blushed. Oh, I actually came to give you something. Levi presented the golden apple solemnly. To thank you for your hospitality, I brought a little gift. I hope you like it. It might help you in a pinch. This. Agra hesitated. It's too much. I just did what I had to do. It's not necessary. Sometimes your modesty gets me down. Levi insisted, placing the apple in his hand. Consider it a token of our friendship. Friendship. Agra turned the apple over in his hands. Elves generally favored starlight silver, but they didn't turn down fine craftsmanship. Agra clearly liked the apple. If I were a female elf, I might have to star in an elf-human romance with you. Levi almost choked. No, 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 you should give me that golden apple back. Huh, just kidding. But it's a generous gift. Don't hesitate to ask for help if you need it. I'll remember that. It might have been his imagination, but Agra's words had a tinge of sadness. Elves and humans, Levi sighed. Elves were immortal unless something went wrong. Humans lived for a century at most. Friendships with short-lived races became sad memories. Feelings weighed heavily on elves. Some faded and died from grief. Humans might only live for 100 years, but that wasn't necessarily true for Levi. Only time would tell. Hey, don't think so much. Everything's fine, right? Levi reassured him. The golden apple seemed to resonate with the elves' aesthetic, so it was a suitable gift. Good enough. Chapter 57, Baidaohui. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Let's jump ahead 2 weeks. The dwarves were throwing a bonfire bash, chowing down on barbecue and grilled veggies carted over from Levi's place, a total free-for-all. This little party was a rare sight in the desolate valley, bringing a welcome spark of life to the place. Back in the guest room the elves had set up, Levi was about to crash for a nap when Gandalf dragged him outside for a walk. Levi wasn't really sleepy anyway, so they strolled around the courtyard together. Of course, the wizard didn't just want a social call. Before long, Elrond joined them, and the three of them ambled along. As they walked, Elrond brought up the dragon, clearly annoyed that Gandalf had kept it a secret. Actually, that's why I wanted to talk to you both today. You've got to trust me on this. I know what I'm doing, Gandalf quickly explained, but it was clear Elrond and he had different takes on the whole thing. They both sensed potential futures, but they weren't necessarily the same ones. The future, after all, could go either way. Do you really know? The dragon's been asleep for 60 years. What if your plan backfires? What if it wakes up? And what if it works? If the dwarves could take back the Lonely Mountain. Gandalf doubled down on his Lonely Mountain strategy, outlining the upsides of helping the dwarves reclaim their home. This is a huge risk, Gandalf. Sitting around waiting to die is just as risky, Gandalf shot back. Besides, we have a safety net. When things get dicey, Levi and I will figure something out. Gandalf stopped suddenly, glancing at Levi and then at Elrond. He's right, Levi said, deciding to back the old man. Sometimes you just have to play along. I'm in. Levi is strong, no doubt. I can sense that even back in the First Age, he'd have been a force to be reckoned with. But going up against that dragon? Nobody can say they're 100% sure. Elrond shook his head. The elves had been on the decline for too long. If something went wrong and the dragon went on a rampage, they could handle it, but the cost would be steep. It could push the already weakened elves over the edge. Oh, come on, Thorin has every right to Erebor. What are you so worried about? Elrond still wasn't convinced. Have you forgotten? There's madness in their blood. The moment they lay eyes on the treasure in the Lonely Mountain, it'll come bubbling to the surface. His grandfather was driven mad, and so was his father. Can you guarantee Thorin Oakenshield won't follow the same path? Gandalf, your decisions don't just affect us. The shape of Middle-earth is bigger than you or me. Hearing that, Gandalf just shook his head and cut the conversation short. Look, no matter what we do, the dwarves are heading for the Lonely Mountain. They've made up their minds, and nobody can stop them. And Thorin doesn't answer to anyone, including me. Elrond sounded defeated. You should be talking to someone else, not me. The three of them stopped in front of a staircase. On the landing, an elf bathed in a soft glow turned and looked down. Levi's eyes met hers, and he was momentarily stunned. Beautiful, dignified, elegant, the words fit this lady perfectly. This was Lady Galadriel, wife of the Lord of the Golden Wood, one of the most powerful elves in Middle-earth. Lady Galadriel. Mithrandir. Gandalf bowed respectfully. Time may have changed me, but it can't change the Lady of Lorien. I didn't even know Lord Elrond had invited you. Gandalf smiled, glancing at Elrond as if to say, why didn't you tell me sooner? He didn't. A sharp voice cut in from behind. I was the one who invited the lady. At the sound of that voice, the smile vanished from Gandalf's face. He took a deep breath, turned around, and bowed slightly, though reluctantly. Saruman. You've been busy lately, Gandalf. Saruman stared at him for a moment, then looked away and fixed his gaze on Levi. Why is there a regular human here? It's getting late. Unless it's absolutely necessary, he should go back and rest. Our meeting isn't for just anyone to listen in on. He was trying to get Levi out of there before getting down to business. No, Levi's not just anyone. Gandalf quickly countered. A large part of our plan hinges on Levi being there to make it work. His power is far beyond what you imagine. He can even change the game. Really? I wouldn't be so sure. Truth be told, when Saruman first met Levi, he had a feeling the human was something special, but he was still going to argue with Gandalf, just for the sake of arguing with him. This is Levi, the bane of the orcs in the Misty Mountains. At the last moment, Elrond stepped up to bat for Levi, enemy of the orcs. That title had replaced Orc Killer when Levi's actions caused the orcs in the Misty Mountains to hunker down and strengthen their defenses. Basically, everyone there knew what Levi had been up to. If they wanted to know, the words made it clear that it would be foolish to be stubborn. Fine, then he can stay, Saruman said grudgingly. Lady Galadriel gave Levi a small nod, smiling as she invited him to join them. Levi imitated Gandalf, offering a polite greeting. The little drama was over. The Lady of the Golden Wood, the Lord of Rivendell, the White Wizard of Isengard, the Grey Wizard who wandered Middle-earth, and Levi, and just like that, the five of them were holding an impromptu summit. The dragon doesn't belong to anyone, but if it falls into the wrong hands, it'll be a disaster for Middle-earth. The wrong hands? What wrong hands? Saruman shot back at Gandalf. The enemy was defeated long ago, and the ring's been lost at sea. Your fears are baseless. Levi, leaning against a stone pillar, smirked but decided to keep his mouth shut. Right now, Saruman was just arrogant, jealous, and condescending toward Gandalf. He was still on the side of the free peoples and could be considered an ally. Gandalf, we've fought hard for 400 years of peace. There's no need to take unnecessary risks. Elrond, always one for stability, sided with Saruman. Peace? Is it really peace? Trolls are coming down from the mountains, raiding farms and pastures. Orcs are attacking us on the roads. Ask Levi how many orcs he's had to kill on the road. You know how chaotic things are. But that's not a sign of imminent war, Elrond countered. Saruman quickly chimed in, you always like to make mountains out of molehills. No, it's not just smog. There's something more sinister at work in Middle-earth. We can ignore it, but it won't ignore us. Gandalf spoke of his concerns. As he did, Levi noticed that Lady Galadriel and Elrond had moved to stand beside him, behind Gandalf. That meant that, like him, they actually supported what Gandalf was saying. It was 4 against 1, with Saruman all alone on the right side. Saruman's face froze when he saw that everyone but him had rallied to Gandalf's side. There's a necromancer holed up in Dol Guldur. He can summon the dead. Gandalf told them what Radagast the Brown had reported and urged them to attack Dol Guldur. That necromancer is, at best, just some nobody who's dabbled in dark magic. Nothing to worry about. Saruman kept objecting and rambling on. After listening for a while, Gandalf seemed to zone out, lost in thought. Are you even listening to me? Look at him, it's like I'm talking to myself. Of course he wasn't listening. Levi shifted against the stone pillar, finding a more comfortable position. The bearers of the 3 elven rings could communicate telepathically. Lady Galadriel must have noticed the Morgul blade on Gandalf and was checking it out with him. Sure enough, a moment later, Gandalf pulled out the sword and placed it on the stone table. It was standard issue for the Nazgul, Sword of Morgul, attack +7, special effect. Wither, those wounded by the Sword of Morgul are slowly dragged into darkness, their lives withering away. Ordinary means can't heal this wound. You need magic or some secret healing method to relieve it. It was specially designed to mess with free peoples and wasn't very effective against dark creatures. Impossible, absolutely impossible. It's just a coincidence. Even with undeniable evidence right in front of his face, Saruman stuck to his conservative guns. Let's think this through. He started up his rant again, but what he didn't know was that the dwarves had already packed up and left. Gandalf had obviously planned it this way. He'd kept Saruman busy so the dwarves could get a head start and force Saruman to make a decision. Sure enough, after a few minutes, Linder came to report the news. Lord Elrond, the dwarves have left. He could barely keep a straight face as he said it. Thank Vera they're gone. With the dwarves gone, the meeting wrapped up. The final decision: help the dwarves, attack Dol Guldur, and gather information. But just as everything was settled and everyone was about to leave, Lady Galadriel stopped Levi and walked slowly toward him. Chapter 58, Front Hall Door. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lady Galadriel. Levi nodded, wondering what the Lady of the Golden Forest wanted. As Galadriel approached, Levi felt a holy aura emanating from her, almost purifying him. He looked up at her. He remembered her ability to see the future was far stronger than any wizard or elf lord, more detailed and far-reaching. The moment Levi raised his head, Galadriel instinctively tried to see something in his eyes. But she was stunned, she couldn't see anything. Your future is uncertain, she said after a moment. Levi wasn't sure if it was a compliment, so he remained silent. Though she couldn't see the distant future, she could still glimpse possibilities in his near future, especially as his fate intertwined with others. This expedition faces many potential pitfalls, but your presence may help avert them. I wish you a safe journey, Levi. You're welcome to visit Lothlorien when this is over. Galadriel was intrigued by Levi's blank future. She'd never seen anything like it. She thought she might try to reveal it with the mirror of Galadriel when he visited the Golden Wood. Thank you for your blessing. I will. Galadriel smiled and nodded. Levi felt a little disoriented, and when he came to, she was gone. Levi, thought someone called from the bottom of the stairs. He turned to see Gandalf hurrying up, looking anxious. We need to leave now. Thorin and his company are far ahead. It'll take us a while to catch up. I heard from the elves they're heading through the high pass. If the orcs are back, they could be ambushed. Even though Levi had cleared the high pass of orcs, there was no guarantee they wouldn't return. High pass. That's. I hope they're okay. Levi turned to get his horse. Wait, I suggest you leave your horse with the elves for now. The path ahead won't be easy. They'd have to navigate steep, narrow mountain trails and possibly dark, cramped caves. Not ideal for horses. Okay, it can stay here. Let's go. Levi and Gandalf hurried after the dwarves. Meanwhile, Thorin's group had finally escaped the rock giant's playground. Exhausted, the thunderstorm raged on, and they desperately needed rest. Hey, I found a cave. Everyone, come on. Philly and Keely, scouting ahead, called out, leading them toward a relatively flat cave entrance. We'll rest here tonight. No fire. We leave at dawn, Thorin ordered. No, Thorin, we were supposed to wait for Gandalf and Levi, Balin reminded him. Plans change. Late that night, the dwarves were snoring loudly. even Beaufort, on guard, was nodding off. Bilbo suddenly opened his eyes, looked at the sleeping dwarves, packed his things, and picked up a walking stick. "Where are you going?" Beaufort, startled awake, asked. "Back to Rivendell." "No, you can't leave. You're part of the company now. You're one of us." "No, I'm not. Thorin's right. I shouldn't have come. I shouldn't have run away from home on a whim." "Bilbo, I understand. You're just homesick." Beaufort whispered. "You don't understand. You're dwarves. You live on the road. You never settle down. You don't belong anywhere." Beaufort listened, sadness in his eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean that." Bilbo stammered. He'd almost forgotten the dwarves' quest was to reclaim their homeland. "No, you're right, Bilbo." Touched, Beaufort didn't blame him. The dwarves had been tolerant of the hobbit from the start. Except for Thorin's harsh words, they'd been looking out for him. If an elf had said that, Beaufort would have picked up his axe. But this was Bilbo, a hobbit with a warm home. "May all the luck in the world be with you." "I mean it, Bilbo." Beaufort patted Bilbo's shoulder, telling him he understood. "Wait, what's that?" Beaufort noticed the dagger at Bilbo's waist emitting a pale blue glow, bright in the dark cave. The dwarves sure had a knack for finding trouble. Every time they looked for a place to rest, they always found the most dangerous spot. This seemingly flat cave was called the front porch. The anteroom of Goblin Town. The orcs living there were a smaller, weaker, but more cunning and agile variant of the orc tribe. Goblin was a more fitting name. "Wake up! Alert!" Thorin, who had been feigning sleep, jumped up and shouted, "Too late!" Bang! The floor of the front porch gave way, revealing a passage. They all tumbled down, sliding and bumping. Plop. They landed right into a swarm of goblins. So many, so dense, they were quickly overwhelmed. Despite the dwarves' desperate fight, they were soon captured and dragged to the center of Goblin Town. Only Bilbo remained, squatting there, terrified. Bilbo was short, even shorter than the goblins, and his clothes blended with the cave. Hobbits also had a knack for blending into their surroundings. The goblins didn't even notice him, but as the horde passed and Bilbo stood, a lone goblin spotted him and attacked with a shriek. During the struggle, Bilbo fell into a deep pit and tumbled down, gone. I never thought creatures like that existed in Middle-earth. Far away, Levi looked up at a group of rock giants taller than mountains, throwing boulders at each other in play, amazed. Rock giants 80,000/80,000. "They're more dangerous than a dragon," Gandalf, who had just arrived, said, also looking up. "Strength-wise, yes, but don't worry. They're not intelligent and have no interest in Middle-earth. Neither Sauron nor Morgoth could make them do anything. They're neutral. Don't worry about them. We need to keep moving." Chapter 59 Blocking the door again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "They should be waiting for us," Gandalf announced as they reached the Misty Mountains Pass. "That's the plan." "Maybe." Levi surveyed the area. It hadn't changed since his last visit. Even if they didn't wait, they'd find shelter after that downpour. "We can catch up when they rest." "Huh." Gandalf stopped abruptly, eyeing a cave. "This is the Orc town front gate, a trap the orcs set for travelers. It's why this road's been abandoned for so long. I even thought about getting a rock giant to block it, but they're impossible to reason with." The knowledgeable wizard shared the history, then knelt to touch the ground. "The mechanism was triggered recently. Thorin and the others must have been caught. This isn't good. Let's go down and rescue them." Levi stepped forward, inspecting the walls and ground. "Don't bother. The Orc town goblins are clever. You can't open their gates from the outside." Gandalf stood. "But I know a back entrance. We could sneak in, or we could dig in." Levi pulled out a diamond pickaxe. "Lead the way. I'll be damned if he doesn't dig through that front door." Gandalf stroked his beard, inhaling sharply. He'd almost forgotten what Levi was capable of. This way, dong 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 dong, the pickaxe blurred in Levi's hand, carving a neat, 2-meter-high tunnel underground at incredible speed. Levi dug, Gandalf held a torch for light. Hold up. After a while, Gandalf stopped Levi. We're close. Let me take a peek. He tapped his staff on the ground, a transparent ring of light burst outwards, ignoring obstacles, expanding. The halo passed through rock and debris, covering a group of goblins in a cave. They remained oblivious, going about their business. Gandalf rarely used a wide-range detection spell. Before entering Middle-earth, wizards faced restrictions. They couldn't flaunt their power before mortals, forcing Gandalf to rely on swords and clubs. But with Levi, those restrictions seemed looser. Still, it was only a little leeway. Full power might cleave the mountain in two. The unrestricted war of wrath of the ancient era had sunk an entire continent. Right there. I see them. Gandalf pointed. 50 meters that way, then down. Dong 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 dong. Levi swung the pickaxe, dislodging rocks, and soon reached the spot. Snap, another stone fell away, revealing light from below. They'd reached the orc town center. Levi peeked his head through. A fat figure sat on a flat stone, interrogating the surrounded dwarves. Their confiscated weapons lay on the ground. After collecting the weapons, the goblins found a pile of silver tableware and candlesticks engraved with "Made in Rivendell" in small letters. Second Age Rivendell stuff. Not even good enough to be trash. The Orc King casually tossed aside the 3,000-year-old antiques. They hated elven things. As for why the dwarves had them, they were souvenirs taken from Rivendell. Clearly, Levi's automatic picking up function worked better. Hey, look who it is, Thorin Oakenshield. Checking the loot, the Orc King spotted Thorin and grinned. I know your head's worth a lot, dead or alive. Tell Azog I captured the Dwarf King. Tell him to bring the reward. A goblin scurried off with the message. As the Orc King prepared to continue his interrogation, a goblin picked up a sword from the ground, drew it, and gasped. Aha! He recoiled, throwing the sword aside. The Orc King glanced at the ground and jumped back, accidentally crushing a skinny goblin behind him. It's Biter, the biting sword that slit the throats of thousands of orcs. He yelled, wow! The surrounding goblins scattered, creating a wide circle. No one dared approach the sword. Even after the original owner died, the sword still held power. You damned fools! The Orc King was furious. Punish them. Whip them to death. I'll skin them and chop off their heads. Snap! Goblins lashed the dwarves with whips, beat them with fists, and raised bone blades. Time to go. Seeing the dwarves in danger, Gandalf jumped down. Even Levi, with his fall protection enchantment, would have hesitated. This old man was fearless. Levi ate a golden apple. Then I will. Boom! Before Levi could jump, a white light burst from the cave, and a powerful blast erupted from Gandalf. Debris flew everywhere, and goblins were hurled into the abyss. Even the Orc King was affected. His metal and wood chair was blown away, and he tumbled to the ground, screaming, boom. The white light faded. Now, only Gandalf remained standing. Nearby goblins had vanished, and those further away crawled to avoid the blast. Even the heavy Orc King lay prone. Thorin opened his eyes. Gandalf. The wizard drew his sword, the fire ring on his hand glowing. Grab your weapons and fight. Fueled by hope, the dwarves fought off the goblins, retrieved their weapons, and followed Gandalf into battle. That's the foe hammer. The Orc King recognized the sword in Gandalf's hand. As king of the goblins and a leader of the Misty Mountains orcs, he was knowledgeable. Gandalf knew all the swords he didn't recognize. It was hard to say which had been in Middle-earth longer, but orcs had long lifespans. Even Azog was at least 200 years old. Recovering, the Orc King raised his skull scepter and ordered the goblins to attack. After the initial blast, perhaps due to the crowd, or something else, Gandalf couldn't repeat the powerful spell. He drew Glamdring and led the dwarves to escape. Goblins swarmed after them. Recovering from the shock, they surrounded them in overwhelming numbers. The noise was deafening, and enemies were everywhere. No matter how powerful, 14 couldn't beat thousands of goblins. The group was soon at a disadvantage, but then, a nightmare-like black figure dropped from the sky. The long sword cleaved a small vacuum. Ah! The Orc King stumbled back. It's him, the vicious human, enemy of orcs. Levi swung his sword, slicing through a goblin's neck. The goblin froze, its eyes darting, and its body went haywire. Levi patted the goblin's head. Snap, the head fell. This sword was too sharp, it could easily do over 12 damage. That was just the minimum. Often, with little armor, enemies were sliced in half instantly. At the narrow entrance, Levi single-handedly held the line. Each swing swept away goblins. The swept-away goblins became fiery projectiles, knocking down those behind. This was the power of the sweeping blade. Each attack covered a wide area, hitting as many as possible. Levi considered adding a knockback enchantment. It might be more useful than in the game. Behind Levi, the dwarves ran, glancing back. Levi had created a clear zone, a buffer. Don't look back, hurry. Gandalf urged, though he couldn't resist looking back himself. The Orc King, guarded by goblins, watched the sword in Levi's hand. He didn't recognize the sword that made him cold. He'd never seen or heard of it, but from now on, Levi would make him know it. Caressing the cold, gleaming sword, Levi faced the hesitant goblins and repeated. Come on, try to get past me. Chapter 60 Ring. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The black armor, an aura that could overwhelm armies, and an arrogance that just radiated off him, it all reminded the Orc King of one being, the overlord of all orcs and wargs. The dark figure seemed to merge with the one standing before him. No, it can't be him. While this guy was a decent fighter, he was nowhere near that level. That one wasn't just about fighting. Don't waste time here, let's go another way. The Orc King, with his knowledge of who's who, took off with a bunch of orc warriors. Hey, come back here, Levi yelled, chasing after them. Meanwhile, in the caves, Levi was chasing down a bunch of goblins. Elsewhere, another group of goblins were chasing the dwarves and Gandalf. The Orc King found himself stuck in the middle, sweating and trying to get away from the maniac behind him, while ordering the goblins up ahead to attack the dwarves. It was a cacophony of noise. At the same time, the battle raged on in the orc town. Deep down in that hidden valley, Bilbo had just come to. The first thing he heard was a raspy voice nearby, muttering to itself about what it was doing. Goblin, meat is thin and stringy. Gotta peel the skin off first. Better than nothing, precious. Thanks to the halfling's natural knack for hiding, Bilbo hadn't been discovered even when he was unconscious. Now, he was huddled behind a rock, quietly watching the skinny, weird creature bashing a goblin's head in with a rock. The goblin wasn't getting away. As the unfortunate goblin met its end, a golden ring slipped off the strange creature's finger and rolled right to Bilbo's feet. The hobbit picked it up. What's this? Bilbo looked at the ring, thinking it was quite pretty. Precious, but his attention was quickly pulled away. He cautiously watched the skinny creature messing with the goblin, and slipped the ring into his pocket. Seeing this brutal scene, Bilbo took a deep breath. This place was seriously messed up. He turned his head, took another deep breath to calm down, and when he peeked out again, the skinny creature was gone. Alarmed, Bilbo looked up sharply. A pair of big eyes stared back. Oh, bless us, little one. Looks nice and plump. Been eating well, precious. Just as the skinny creature grinned and lunged at Bilbo, Bilbo whipped out his dagger and held it to its neck. Back off. Stay away from me. Precious. Elvish blade. But you're no elf, no orc. What are you, precious? I'm Bilbo Baggins. Baggins? What's Baggins? I'm a hobbit, from the Shire. Oh, hobbit. We've eaten bats and fish, but never hobbit. Gollum, is he fresh and tender? Get away. Bilbo waved his dagger, keeping the creature at bay. Listen, I don't want any trouble. Just tell me the way out and we'll go our separate ways. No games. Games? We like games. Precious, why don't we play a few riddles? If you win, I'll tell you how to get out. You. Yes, precious, us, Gollum. Bilbo looked around, but he didn't see anyone else. This guy's totally schizophrenic. This was Gollum, who lived in a dark corner at the bottom of Orc Town, and so, by chance, Bilbo and Gollum began a riddle game deep underground, but Gollum had picked the wrong opponent. Riddles were Bilbo's specialty. Gollum was soon losing badly. But he wasn't exactly a trustworthy guy. You lost. Now, take me out of here. Bilbo said with relief after winning the game. Lost? No, we didn't lose, precious. Gollum stared at Bilbo's dagger, a fierce expression on his face. He reached for his waist, trying to grab the ring and put it on so he could attack Bilbo unseen, but his hand found nothing. Where's it gone? Precious. My precious. No. It's lost. What do you have in your pocket? Gollum glared at Bilbo. Nothing. Bilbo quietly took out the ring and put his hands behind his back. You stole it. Realizing the ring was gone, Gollum went ballistic. He stopped caring about the dagger in Bilbo's hand and charged with a shriek. Caught off guard, Bilbo went down, the ring slipped from his hand, flew into the air, shifted position, and landed right on Bilbo's finger as he fell. Clearly, it was done with Gollum and was ready to get away from this sunless underground abyss. The moment the ring was on, Bilbo vanished, slipping into another dimension. He was invisible. Gollum couldn't see him anymore, and could only wail and shout. He must have gone toward the exit. Gollum muttered, and headed in one direction. Exit? Without thinking about why he had suddenly turned invisible, Bilbo followed. Run! In the cave on the other side, Gandalf led the way, staff in his left hand, sword in his right, making a valiant stand, but when he looked back, he saw that there were still countless goblins chasing them, looking anxious, as if they were being pushed by someone. Why are they still coming? This is so annoying. A dwarf grumbled. Behind the dwarves, the Orc King waddled forward, ordering his minions to surround Gandalf and company. While looking over his shoulder, he saw the dark figure, relentlessly pursuing like a ghost, putting down rocks to clear the rugged terrain. Damn it! Why is he still chasing us? The Orc King was really scared now. Luckily, after a lot of detours, they had managed to cut off the dwarves and the wizard up ahead, leaving the dark figure temporarily behind and buying them some time to breathe. Think you can outrun me? The Orc King panted and looked at Gandalf smugly. Boom. He swung his huge skull-topped staff at Gandalf, who tried to block with his sword. But no matter how sharp and strong it was just a long sword, and no match for a war hammer like the staff. With a clang, the sword was knocked from Gandalf's hand, and he stumbled back, nearly falling. Seeing his opponent disarmed and surrounded, the Orc King was sure he had this in the bag. Now, let's see what you can do, wizard. He raised his staff again, ready to deliver the killing blow, but Gandalf's staff hit the ground, and the sword flew up on its own, slashing the Orc King's belly and knocking him to his knees. The attack had turned the tables in an instant. Just like that, the Orc King's life was in Gandalf's hands, with a sword about to fall. Wait. Stop. Don't. I'll let you go, okay? The Orc King begged, losing his smug look. No. Before Gandalf could answer, a voice that sent shivers down the goblin's spines came from above. That man. He's caught up. Above the crowd, Levi put away the stones he'd been using to build the path and drew his sword. Without hesitation, he leaped down, bringing the sword down and ending the Orc King's life.